my name is Iana. I'm the Whistleblower Protection Coordinator for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. As the HHS Whistleblower Protection Coordinator, my goal is to empower the HHS community with the protections they need to report wrongdoing without fearing the consequences. I also aim to ensure employers are aware that there are consequences for taking retaliatory acts against our most precious asset, you, HHS employees, and employees of HHS contractors and grantees. You might be wondering, how does this help me? Well, whistleblower disclosures by HHS employees have the ability to save lives, as well as billions of taxpayer dollars. Whistleblowers play a critical role in keeping our government honest, efficient, and accountable. Federal laws strongly encourage employees of federal agencies, contractors, and grant recipients to disclose wrongdoing. This is because whistleblowers root out waste, fraud, and abuse, and protect public health and safety. That's why federal whistleblower laws also protect employees from retaliation for disclosing wrongdoing. The Office of Inspector General, or OIG, relies upon complaints from those most knowledgeable about HHS programs to report fraud, waste, and abuse. However, we realize that individuals like you are less likely to report if you believe you might be retaliated against for doing so. That's why it's so important for you to know and understand whistleblower protections, as well as the legal prohibitions against retaliation. And that's what I'm here for. This training video serves to provide you an overview of the federal whistleblower laws applicable to HHS employees, contractors, subcontractors, grantees, and subgrantees. The video will cover the following things, like who is and is not covered by federal whistleblower laws, what kind of disclosures are protected under the law, what is whistleblower retaliation, who you can report wrongdoing to in order to guarantee protections, and what is the role of the Office of Inspector General, the Whistleblower Protection Coordinator, and HHS agencies. Throughout the series, we'll hear from my colleagues across HHS who will dive into some of the details on the subject and provide first-hand experience to help you understand your rights. We'll also hear from Mr. Miller, a whistleblower who will help us break down what you might expect throughout the process. Okay, this all sound good to you? Great, let's get to it. First things first, I want to introduce the HHS OIG Whistleblower Team. It's important that you know who we are and who you'll be working with. It's our mission to ensure that you're protected if you report fraud, waste, and abuse. There are 4 main components of the program. First, the Office of Investigations, OI, hotline. They are responsible for retrieving, analyzing, and routing your complaint to the appropriate OIG office. Second, there's the OI Special Investigations Branch. They conduct whistleblower retaliation investigations. Next, there's the Office of Counsel to the Inspector General, or OSIG, Advice Branch Operations Team. They provide legal support and advice on whistleblower protections and investigations, as well as Office of Special Counsel referrals. Finally, the head of the operations team is the Whistleblower Protection Coordinator. That's me. Our cadre of incredible attorneys are responsible for providing education and outreach to HHS employees, contractors, and grantees on the appropriate handling of protected disclosures and whistleblower protections. We've got quite the team, and they're all here to help. Okay, now we'll move on to one of the most basic questions we get asked. Who is protected under the whistleblower laws? This is important because knowing you're protected can give you the confidence that you need to make a disclosure. So let's hear from my colleague, Melissa Tucker, about the major whistleblower laws.
Thanks, Iana. It's important to note that there are 4 major whistleblower protection laws that provide protections for federal employees, and recipients of federal contracts and grant awards. First, there's the Whistleblower Protection Act. Second, the Military Whistleblower Protection Act. Third, the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013. And lastly, Presidential Policy Directive 19. These laws provide protection to the following individuals: federal employees, both civilian and military, applicants for federal employment, federal contractor and subcontractor employees, including personal services contractors, or federal grantee and subgrantee employees. However, it's important to note that because of the limited scope of these laws, they do not provide whistleblower protections to the following people: Medicare and Medicaid beneficiaries, providers delivering healthcare services under a Medicare or Medicaid provider agreement, employees of insurance or pharmaceutical companies, and concerned members of the public. While these individuals are not covered by the federal whistleblower laws, they may be protected under other laws like the retaliation provisions of the False Claims Act.
Thanks, Melissa. So, starting out, it's important to understand where you stand under the law. Having this knowledge can give you the confidence to take the right steps.
So the whistleblowing process that I was familiar with was as a Army company commander, because when you're leading soldiers, you're subject to having the whistle blown on you. So I tried to apply military policy to civilian government policy, and I know there's not the same type of chain of command that there is in the military. I felt that not informing my leadership was jumping the chain of command. So I really didn't have any other options other than blowing the whistle.
It's important to remember that you have rights. Whether you're a federal employee, an applicant for federal employment, federal contractor or subcontractor, or a federal grantee or subgrantee employee, you have the right to disclose unlawful activity without retaliation. So you can stand up against wrongdoing. And always remember that if you have questions, we're here to help. Now that we know who is protected, let's take a look at what is protected. You might be protected, but it's critical to understand exactly what types of things you are protected from. Now, whistleblower laws protect individuals from receiving an adverse employment action when they make what we call a protected disclosure. A protected disclosure is, in general terms, a complaint of fraud, waste, or abuse, unlawful activity, or a danger to public health or safety.
Okay, so it's important to note that individuals are protected when they report information that they reasonably believe is evidence of one or more of the following things: a violation of a law, rule, or regulation, gross mismanagement, which is defined as a substantial risk of significant impact on an agency's mission, gross waste of funds, abuse of authority, or substantial and specific danger to public health or safety. If you have any questions about what falls under these categories, you can always reference this link.
I think in any organization, if you become part of the organization, you have a loyalty to the organization. You don't want to hurt the organization. And in my case, I initially thought the organization was just not informed on how to do these things correctly. Because this particular organization, they had a history of awarding grants, not so many federal acquisition FAR contracts, and they were fairly new to doing other transaction agreements. So initially I thought it was just out of ignorance that they were doing it incorrectly. Once I found that it was purposeful, I knew that it was, that it was illegal. Even though I felt guilty about whistleblowing, because it's a very good organization, it just had a couple of people that were executing these things that weren't fully honest. What was holding me back was not wanting to hurt the organization. And I think with a lot of whistleblowers will have that feeling that they don't want to hurt the organization. My understanding of it was that once I blew the whistle, I would be protected from retaliation.
Whistleblowing is a big decision. We totally understand. And when it comes to understanding the law, it can be tricky.
It's important to note that there are a few additional protected disclosures that can be made under the laws for individuals in certain categories. First, federal civilians may be protected for reporting censorship related to scientific research or analysis, which includes violations of scientific integrity. There are military members, including members of the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps. They can be protected for reporting threats by a member of the armed services or a federal government employee who indicates a determination or intent to kill or cause serious bodily injury to members of the armed services or civilians, or damage to military, federal, or civilian property. Lastly, for HHS contractors or grant recipient employees, they are protected only when their complaints relate to legal violations, gross mismanagement, or abuse of authority of an HHS contract or grant, a waste of HHS funds, or a substantial and specific danger to public health or safety.
So, it's important to remember that whistleblower laws protect individuals from receiving an adverse employment action when they make a protected disclosure, such as the areas Melissa described. Now, let's dive a little deeper into some examples of these disclosures. Okay, we've covered who's protected and what is protected. Let's move on to some protected disclosure examples.
There are a variety of protected disclosures, but some of the more common ones that we see include healthcare fraud allegations, contract or grant fraud allegations, public safety or patient harm complaints, allegations of senior official misconduct, allegations of ethical conflicts of interest or other laws, rules, or regulations, or incident reports. But just as importantly, it's important to understand what's not a protected disclosure under the whistleblower laws, even if they may be protected under other laws, such as EEO laws. Examples of disclosures that are not considered to be protected whistleblowing include EEO complaints related to violations of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, grievances, labor law violations, or workplace disputes, or unlawful disclosures of information, such as the disclosure of classified information to the media.
Now that's a lot. But understanding what are protected and unprotected disclosures is extremely important. It's not always as black and white as it may seem.
So I think you have to know what your HR capabilities are, how they operate, who they are responsible to. I think that's one of the first steps. The other thing is that you have to know where you file your complaints, what office you file your complaints, and how they're connected to your organization. And the other thing that I think a whistleblower should know is that the Office of Special Counsel, which a lot of people aren't even aware of, it's a very small office of legal people in the government, a very small office, and they take very few cases, but they have the ability to interject and intervene on cases of whistleblowers if they accept the case. You have to inform them, you have to write up what your complaint is, they review it, and if they feel it's something they need to get involved in, they can get involved and actually give a whistleblower even more cover.
If you're uncertain about your situation, just remember that we're always here to help. And now that you know a few examples of protected disclosures, let's walk through who you can report these violations to. Federal employees, contractors, and grantee employees are only protected when they report wrongdoing to the appropriate entity, what we call protected sources. Unfortunately, your grandma is not a protected source. Trust me, I was as sad as you were to hear that news. But let's find out who are protected sources.
Right, so entities that are considered to be protected sources that you should feel safe to report to are members of Congress or representatives of congressional committees, offices of inspectors general, the Government Accountability Office, known as GAO, HHS employees responsible for contract and grant oversight, Department of Justice and other law enforcement officials, courts and grand juries, or management or employees of the contractor and grantee who are responsible for investigating, discovering, and addressing misconduct. It's also important to note that federal civilian employees can report to an additional set of entities. They include supervisors, managers, agency officials, or other federal employees authorized to receive disclosures, the media, and the U.S. Office of Special Counsel.
Now, when you make a protected disclosure to the OIG, you can feel safe that your identity will be protected. Why? Well, the Inspector General Act prohibits us from disclosing identifying information of persons who file complaints with us without their consent.
The only time a complainant's identity is disclosed is when it's unavoidable due to the course of an investigation, which includes when it is necessary to conduct an investigation into whistleblower retaliation. Reporting a protected disclosure to the HHS OIG is easy. You can file a complaint with us through our hotline at this address right here, or you can call 1-800-HHS-TIPS. Just so you are aware, you may or may not receive contact from an investigator when you file a protected disclosure.
All right, let's recap. We've covered who is protected, what is protected, and who to report your disclosure to. The next question you might be asking yourself, if you haven't already, is what action can I take if I was retaliated against? Well, let's find out. So, if you make a protected disclosure to the OIG or any other protected source, you also have the right to file a retaliation complaint using the same avenue for filing your disclosure. Here's that info again. A retaliation complaint is another tool that we have in place to help protect you. Once it's filed, your retaliation complaint will be reviewed by our Office of Investigations to determine if it meets the criteria for investigation. During this criteria review, you may be contacted by an investigator to gather information about your complaint. What happens next?
Well, if your retaliation complaint is accepted for investigation, an investigation will ensue, and you will receive a report of investigation detailing the findings of your case. The investigative report will be provided to you, your employer, and the HHS Secretary or Surgeon General if you are a Commissioned Corps officer. They will make a decision as to what actions will be taken and or remedies available as a result of the OIG's findings.
It's important to note that not every retaliation complaint is accepted for investigation. If your retaliation complaint is declined for investigation, you will receive an email communication from the Office of Investigations. You met our team earlier. What you might not know is that there are 4 core duties for the HHS Whistleblower Protection Coordinator, and they are epic, literally. It's an acronym that stands for the following. E is for educate. Educate HHS employees on their whistleblower protections. P is for promote. Promote the timely and appropriate handling and consideration of protected disclosures and allegations of reprisal. I is for inform. Provide information to whistleblowers on the timeliness of reprisal complaints, alternative dispute resolution, or ADR, and other avenues for relief. And C is for connect. Facilitate coordination with HHS, OSC, SIGI, Congress, and others on issues related to reprisal complaint timeliness, the appropriate handling of whistleblower disclosures, and the implementation and administration of whistleblower protection laws, rules, and regulations. Just remember, we are here to help. We want to give you the confidence to report any sort of wrongdoing because you could save not only taxpayer dollars, but also lives by reporting disclosures. Should you ever have any additional questions about whistleblower protections, I encourage you to visit our website or email us. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day.